Hey everyone, welcome back to Crypto Cash. Thank you so much again for joining me here. Hope you're having a great day. We got a critical update here today. We're going to start off with some fun stuff, of course, with some social media polls, kind of get a perspective of what you guys are thinking, as well as Bitcoin rising reg, a breakdown here. This is probably one of the most important things to kind of recognize how this shift in momentum is occurring and the fact that we are shifting bearish. There's a lot of other confirming factors too, but we're going to do a quick comparative analysis on these coins and just kind of see if there's any outliers and obviously understand CME gaps and the crypto market overview. So be sure to stick around. We've got an important one today. Let's take a look. All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started with some social media polls. These are just some polls I like to post early in the morning when I get up, start my day, kind of see where we're at here, what people are thinking. We've got 32 votes, and of the 32, 87% of you think we're going to see 112,000 next. So crypto Twitter is fairly bearish. Let's see what crypto YouTube tells us here, and we can see roughly the same thing. 80% of you out of 20 votes in the last hour have effectively voted for 112,000. So I think the concept here is that we're going lower. At least that's what people believe. I would also agree with that just based on 112,000 being the previous all-time high. This makes the most sense based on the simple fact that you typically see that retest, right? Now, we've already retested that in the past, so it doesn't mean it's going to just stop right there, but there's some confirming factors there with that previous all-time high. A lot of times that will incentivize the price to bounce. We've also got some important liquidation levels here to take a look at, so let's go ahead and start off with actually, let's do something first. I want to just double check these things here and kind of talk about the elephant in the room or the whale in the room, right? Basically, this rising wedge pattern, we can see that we are effectively breaking down from this ascending trend. And now this doesn't mean the price just goes straight to zero. It just tells us that we are shifting momentum. This triple divergence over the last few months, ever since June, we can see here that we've had 3 divergences, and this is the first one to actually carry some weight. And what I mean by that is that there's more velocity here, so to speak, more momentum, and that does tend to be more precipitous. In other words, it continues faster and kind of grows quicker just based on the way that it's moving. So it's not a great sign. Obviously, we know about the bearish divergence on the weekly time frame. This is an early indication letting us know we have an RSI divergence. Quickly double check here as well. We can see money flowing into stablecoin. This is generally a bad sign for altcoins. It's not necessarily terrible, but it does kind of, anytime we see altcoins pulling back, usually money flows into stablecoin. So that is good in a sense, and Bitcoin dominance isn't shooting straight up. This implies we're going to see a 1-to-1 ratio for altcoins with Bitcoin. So generally speaking, when Bitcoin dominance is stable, we're going to see price and altcoins essentially moving comparative with each other. So just know that's probably the case here moving forward, which implies that Bitcoin, once it finds its bottom, altcoins will, start to stabilize too. It's just kind of that natural little cycle that we're in right now. So we are kind of in that downtrend, everything responds to Bitcoin kind of trend right now. Looking on the left-hand side, just a quick comparative analysis. This is super helpful to understand because then you can kind of see, at a glance what these coins are doing. Ethereum still overextended, so to speak, on its way down. 4,100 is that rough estimate of confluence. We discussed that on the charts yesterday and multiple days in the past. That's been an area of interest for me for consideration on a long. Same thing with the 112 to 113,000 for Bitcoin. It just seems sensible to kind of buy that dip, that double bottom. All right, so that's kind of what we're looking at there. Solana, SUI, and XRP, we're going to discuss this here shortly, but majority, if not all of them, have effectively lost their key level supports. So further downside should be expected. Same thing here with Ethereum too. Its CME gap hasn't fully filled yet, but 4,100, as per usual, is that lower area of support based on that CME gap getting filled. It's not the only reason to trade this coin, but it is something to recognize. Just quickly noting here, fear and greed index is pulling back. So it's very standard. We kind of want that. We want more fear in the market, so there can be more buying pressure. Remember, every time the price pulls back, the dips are bought. And the reason why we can identify that is because our altcoin season index is still high. In other words, we do still have money flowing away from altcoins. Obviously, it's moving into stablecoin. We've already identified that, but 1.57 trillion in crypto market cap, it's still pretty good for altcoins. So we haven't lost that threshold or shifted bearish for altcoins. While they're looking bad, they're not looking terrible. They're moving in a lot of ways 1-to-1 or 2-to-1 with Bitcoin on the downside, which is much better than 3 or 4 or 5-to-1, which we do normally see. So I'm still confident that altcoins are in decent shape, and that we're going to be able to see altcoins to continue to flourish at some point. We just really need Bitcoin to bottom out in whichever range it decides to do so. So let's take a look here at the back-end data for Bitcoin, kind of work our way down. And we want to recognize here that top traders are now short. So as they continue to short, the likelihood of the price action staying in this range going lower is higher. We can see, however, which is conversely here, not really the best gauge, but we have more people trying to buy. Now, this is one of those interesting things where if you have more bids than asks, it can kind of skew the it can skew what you think is real. The best way to describe it here is that when you have a lot of bids, a lot of people are trying to buy. So every time the dip comes down, people are continuously wanting to buy. So they're in line essentially to buy these dips once they hit a certain point. When the bid-ask ratio comes to break even, essentially, that's usually when you see that shift in momentum. But as you can tell, we've had more bids as the price pulls back, implying that buy orders are continuously high. Therefore, continuation lower is also high. That being said, we got open interest at 116. That's an easy round number to remember. 116,000 is the new resistance. We move over here as well. We can recognize liquidation short deltas at about 9 billion. That isn't super massive. We've seen 30 to 40 billion in significant continuation patterns. So don't think that we're massively overextended for Bitcoin. It can totally go lower. All that said, 113,000 is this area of liquidation that we want to kind of focus on. I'm looking for a long, once again, on the 112 to 113K range based solely on liquidation being swept and an overextension, which we're soon to see. Now, granted, you don't want to buy on overextension, but a lot of times lately with all these dips being bought, people trying to buy, there's a good chance that we do continue a little bit lower that range. Taking a look at this here, open interest is at 5.5%. That's the delta. That's not good at all. We want that number to be higher than our true retail longs here, and in this case, we are at about 87% conversely. So this is an upside down situation. You don't want to take longs into this. Once again, it depends on how you look at it, of course, but we can see here as well, Ethereum pretty much trading like crazy. There's tons of money flowing in and out of Ethereum. This is basically the number of trades. So we're seeing Ethereum probably one of the highest traded coins right now. Now, take a look here at the regular charts. Let's go ahead and double check the daily and kind of work our way down and just kind of understand here that we lost the 50 and the 20-day SMA. That confluence at 116, 117,000 didn't work so well as a support. And we talked about this a couple of days ago being a potential reality. You want to trade on confluence, but you also want to have invalidation levels, and a closure below 116, 117 was that validation that a long position is not viable, at least along 116. So the concept here remains true that 116K range is becoming a resistance for us. Furthermore, we're lost 50 in the RSI, stochastic swinging down, MACD is diverging. These are all signs that we're essentially going likely to continue lower here in the overall sense. The only thing that would cause the price action to bounce or to pivot here is to see a lot of volume, which we haven't seen yet. This is mostly just selling pressure. We do have a falling wedge pattern here, of course. It continues to squeeze and compress as it gets larger. So a relief rally is due at some point. I just think it's a little too early to consider that, but we are entering our previous overextended state here at 113.2. That's that previous low, and then prior to that, approximately 112,000. Overall, though, from the 4-hour time frame, we're starting to double bottom on the RSI. Money flow index is below the RSI, which is bearish. But if that continues to overextend itself closer to 20, that's usually a good concept to buy. What I mean by that is when you see these little overextensions for money flow index, that's usually a reversal pattern. While this last one didn't massively continue higher, it essentially is a positive sign to look for. Okay, now it's not always the best, so you don't trade solely on that. Everything else is pointing down, but if we do see a money flow index come down massively overextended, this level at 30 holds on the RSI, and of course the price goes sideways for a short while, that would be a consideration to want to take along. But for right now, at this point, there's no real reason to take along, and I think we're a little too late to short personally. While it's statistically more favorable to short right now in the overall sense, to give you perspective, for us, I sent out a trade alert for AVAX, for example, and that trade came through here at about 25% in 17 hours. So when we take these trades, like SUI, for example, 44% 4 days ago, these are trades that we've been taking earlier in the week as hedges against any kind of longs. As the continuation progresses, we get more and more overextended and compression occurs, as we're starting to see here, similar to Bollinger Bands. The likelihood of a significant recovery is quite high. Okay, so don't try to attach yourself to too much of a bearish mindset. While it's good to wait for these ranges to be hit first, you may miss out if you wait too long. So that's why I do recommend dollar cost averaging whenever possible. So let's take a quick look here at Ethereum, see what's going on in the overall sense here. Totally lost its support at 4,400. That level was retested as a new high, and the price continued lower. We have our new point of control here. Actually, it's not really new, but it's increased at 4,300. So we can recognize that we got significant amount of resistance above us. Let's take a look at the back end here and quickly understand here from an open interest perspective. Once more, 4,400 is that heavy concentration of open interest. Secondary to that, we got 4,280, round number 4,300. So easy numbers, remember, 4,300, 4,400, two new resistances for Ethereum. Moving forward though, from that 14 billion short liquidation delta, it's fairly high. That is, I mean, while it's not monumental for this coin, we've seen higher. It's getting to an overextended state. And once again, we're entering our support range, at least I feel support range based on the CME gap, fair value gaps, and 4,100 as that lower range of liquidation. I think we're going to see some support in the $4,100 to $3,900 range. I'm spreading that out because we have some 0.618 fib levels, the golden pocket at about 3,900 for Ethereum. So those are things that are important to kind of recognize. And those are also previous highs here. So if we look kind of at a slightly larger perspective, we can see we spent some time at resistance at 3,900 and haven't really retested that yet. So my speculations, 4,100 is going to be our initial bouncing point, potentially dead cat on the way back to 39. So that's kind of the rough estimate there on thoughts there for Ethereum. Just based on what I see here on the charts, descending trend line still holding. Daily time frame is, oddly enough, still fairly well bearish if you consider moving averages alone. You never trade solely based on moving averages. I know some folks do that. They think that they're support levels. They're more so just kind of a guide of what direction the trend is heading. Okay. All that said, liquidation is, or we already identified liquidation is about 4,100. We've got our RSI coming down. While these are still moderately bullish signs, we've got a MACD divergence, which is carrying a lot of momentum. So I think that the continuation, precipitation, whatever word you want to use to describe it, to $3,900, $4,100 range makes a lot of sense. So that's where I'm going to be interested in averaging into my position for a potential long there. And ideally, in a perfect world, Bitcoin's bottoming out at 112,000. That would be a perfect case scenario. So hypothetically, we're going to be looking pretty decent in that range. But between now and then, be very cautious just buying the dip and taking it along because you feel like it's a good value. Average in, of course, perhaps on a spot bag, but if you're considering leverage, you want to maybe reconsider rather. How about that? Anyways, those are just my thoughts there for Ethereum. Moving on to Solana, this little support range is holding fairly well, but once more, you continue to retest the support, it'll oftentimes break. So let's take a look at Solana. Recognize, as per usual, open interest above the price, heavy in the 195 to 205 range, but here locally, we're starting to get some amount of open interest at 185. That was supposed to work as a previous support. It did for a little while, but that's the new resistance. So remember, 185, if you're going to consider a long right now, secure profits between now and 185. That's the concept because we're within a range, and range-bound activity or range-bound trading is essentially a very profitable consideration if that is the kind of trader that you are. I've done range-bound trading in my profession, did it for a couple of years. It works very well when ranges are established, but you got to be comfortable with cutting your losses quickly when those ranges are broken. All that said, 1.5 billion in liquidation short delta, implying bears are in control. We take a look here though. There's not a ton of liquidation above and below, but the concentrations are close. In other words, 175, which is only $3 away, and once more 186 to 190. So they're like these little $4 to $5 pockets above and below the price action. Once more, they're establishing themselves above and below these ranges. So that's kind of what we're looking at for Solana in the back end. When we look in the front here, daily time frame does tell us once more, as per usual, most coins are looking like this. We're above all moving averages, which is fantastic. That gives us that emphasis on support. We're right here in our range of control based on volume, that point of control, and we are slowly losing 50 on the RSI. So it's once again kind of an early sign, a shift in momentum. We're also seeing a MACD divergence too with some momentum there. So those are not phenomenal signs here. The 4-hour time frame, does it tell us if we're overextended? Not quite. We still have more downside potential. Until we close above this moving average, I don't think we're going to be in a good shape to see a recovery from here, at least instantly. And my money here is that we're probably going to lose the support level if Bitcoin hits that 112K range, and we're more likely to come down to this maybe 165 to 170 range. But at this point, we do have some confluence below the price. We got that golden pocket, of course, that fib level, which is a common retracement area. And once again, there's confluence there because that was a previous or more local low. So 175 should be well guarded after this area of liquidation is swept. Okay. All right, moving on to SUI. Let's go ahead and see what's going on here. Now, once more, I just want to quickly highlight head and shoulders pattern doesn't imply the price is going to go down because of it, right? It's more like it's more of an effect, not a cause. So please, 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 if you're going to learn anything from my channel, stop trading patterns alone. They have a higher success rate, yes, but they have to have other confirming factors present. That being said, $4.05, 405 is that heavy area of open interest. More locally though, if we kind of take a look, we can see that 350 is guarded for open interest, as well as 370, 380, let's say 380. So round numbers, 350 and 380 are the support and or resistance for SUI. When we look here at 400 million short liquidation delta, that's kind of a lot for this coin, honestly. And then if we do take a look here as well, we're seeing quite a significant amount of liquidation kind of spread out throughout the price action, but for the most part, heaviest concentrations here at about 340 to 350. So a good consideration for a long would be 350, which would be like a manipulative power 3 trade setup. In other words, we're essentially ranging here between 350 and 370. We sweep those lower liquidation levels at about 340 and effectively reject the price and go straight up from there. I'll explain more so about that here in a second. If you're not familiar with Power 3 trade setups, our Discord does have that. It's not in chart patterns, in education. This kind of gives you an idea of what to expect. So I'm thinking we're going to be in an accumulation phase here soon for a lot of coins that are ranging. We're going to see one more leg down for the manipulation phase to sweep late longs and to trap sweep early longs, trap late shorts, and to essentially rip the price action up for that expansion phase here next. That does commonly happen and couple itself with head and shoulders patterns too. But once more, it really depends on the consolidation. So let's see the daily time frame. We've lost all moving averages once more. 360 is the new resistance. We want to double check here. We are below all moving averages. Money flow index is above the price. That's generally favorable in a lot of ways, kind of implying we have more buying pressure. And the viewpoint is that coin is oversold, so people are going to want to buy more. But if we look at the 4-hour time frame, we want to just double check and see that, yeah, we're looking very similar to a lot of other coins here, in which we're seeing that overextension, but also potential continuation lower. So I do personally think we're going to go lower for SUI, but I think it's just one more leg down to 340. So I'm interested in a long around 340, and let me explain what I mean by this. If we look at the hourly time frame, this is a bearish type of flag pattern, right? So if you look here, bearish rectangle rather, where the price action is working itself into a channel, okay? So if you kind of look at this channel here and you see the price ranging, we're in likely an accumulation phase, right? So the price breaks down below that channel, starts to hang out in this area here after sweeping its liquidation range. Most people start entering shorts right here. Then what do you know? Now that people have entered their shorts, the price is going to recover back up, probably hit 360, 370 from there. So I would not be surprised if we see some type of manipulation. These patterns are starting to form on a lot of charts right now. So all we need is that one last leg down for Bitcoin, and then we can consider a handful of longs. Really, it's kind of what we're looking at here. But for right now, the best concept is for the price to pull back lower. It would be naive to think we're just going to bounce and recover off of this type of descending trend. There's not really much here to go on for taking a long position. Okay, so that's kind of the concept there. So SUI, I would wait on SUI until we see 340, possibly even 330. So this is an interesting one. Taking a look over here at XRP, we got a falling wedge and a descending broadening wedge. While these are both bullish patterns, we want to make sure we're trading with confluence and then we have bullish components, right? So from a bird's eye view here, ooh, this looks very tasty. I want to jump into this. But on the same accord, it's very, very foolhardy to consider that because market makers are just super good at like making you think that you want to take a trade right now. So let's double check and see, does XRP have any indications that we are moderately bullish? Taking a look here first. 290, we don't really have a ton of open interest in the lower price action. If we're kind of stretching it, we can see 290 is that lower range. I have talked previously about 290 being a good buy zone, which I think from a dollar cost average perspective, perhaps yes, but from a leverage, more likely no. We're seeing a lot more accumulation here between 280 or more interested in acquiring at 280. So the easy way to understand is that liquidation short delta is bearish. We've got majority of liquidation to the upside left and very little to the downside. So I think if 290 is hit based on liquidation alone, we'll probably see the bounce and recovery from there. But once more, there's some conflicting stuff there, right? So, like a lot of things are telling us it's going to go up, other things incentivizing the price to go down. And when we look at the daily time frame, while most daily time frames on the majority of coins are bullish, which this one is sort of, this one actually isn't in a lot of ways too, because we have lost. So far we're losing both moving averages on the daily, where most coins can actually say that they have that still remaining. Same thing here as well with losing 50 in the RSI, money flow index pulling back, stochastic swinging down, and MACD diverging. There's nothing here that tells us you want to take a long, outside of the simple fact that majority liquidation has been swept and we may see a bounce here soon off this descending trend line. Now, this all comes down to what kind of trader you are. Are you the kind of trader that wants to trade on confluence? Or are you the kind of trader that wants to trade, on these short-term pullbacks, right? So hypothetically, you could have some luck taking along right now, but majority of everything we see here on the charts, excluding these bullish type of patterns, are telling us we're going to continue lower. So I'm going to lean more towards price action pulling back further, especially if Bitcoin hits 112K. Now, if Bitcoin does hit 112K, where do you want to average in here? Well, between 280 and 270 makes a lot more sense, just in the overall, just thinking outside of the box here. But the truth is there's nothing here telling us, and no one's really going to know where the best dip to buy is right now until we actually see a discontinuation for Bitcoin to the downside, right? So it's just best to be patient in these situations. When there's too many conflicting factors, you don't trade. Smart traders are going to sit on the sidelines and miss opportunities, but they're going to find better ones. And that's generally where I sit out. For the most part, I like to pay attention to these trends and get a good game plan together. Right now, I've got a lot of different longs that I'm thinking about, but we're not quite there yet. We don't have those factors present, such as 112K for Bitcoin, 4,100 for Ethereum, Solana, maybe 175, and SUI at 340. Those are all price points that are not here yet. Okay. So what are your thoughts? Why don't you comment below and let us know. Don't forget to join us over on Twitter, Telegram, and Discord. Don't forget to also like the video, comment below, and help us grow the channel. Help yourself become a better trader. CryptoCash.tech is a site. Link down below. It's all available for you there. And obviously check out Bitunics. We've been partnered with them for over 2 years. They've been a phenomenal exchange for our members. No KYC or VPN. Look forward to seeing the next one. Thanks again for your time. Take care out there. Bye-bye.